Okay, I'm going to continue with the notes that we had started. If you're just looking at the second part, these are the ones we already talked about. Remember, we said our steps were to find the least common denominator first, multiply each fraction or term to cancel denominators, and then simplify, which could be just solving like the number 2 and number 4, or it could include factoring like we have on this one. So I'm only going to do a couple of these, and I think you have the filled out note sheet that you can look up that I'll post for the rest of it. Okay, so if we look at number 6, we have x minus 4, x plus 4, and x squared minus 16. Remember that x squared minus 16 is x plus 4, x minus 4. So this denominator includes part of this one and part of this one. So my least common denominator is x plus 4 times x minus 4. So remember, this is different than when we did adding and subtracting because we're trying to just get rid of this. The difference is I have equal sign. If all I had was this, then I would have to multiply top and bottom. Okay, this is different because we have an equal sign, and so I can multiply that denominator all the way through and I can cancel it off. So I'm going to write this out where maybe we can read it here. I have 1 over x minus 4 times x plus 4, x minus 4. That entire denominator. Plus 1 over x plus 4, same thing, times x plus 4, x minus 4. Equals 8 over x plus 4, we're using the factored form, so I'm not going to use that one, I'm going to use the factor, times x plus 4, x minus 4. So what I did is I took each original fraction that we had, and I multiplied by that denominator. So think about what cancels. This one we lose the x minus 4, this one we lose the x plus 4, and this one cancels everything. Okay, you cancel from top to bottom. Remember, these are on the top. So you cancel from top to bottom. Each one individually. This one, then this one, then this one. So here, all we're left with is x plus 4. All we're left with in the second fraction is x minus 4. And over here, we're left with 8. So out of all that mess, this is what we get. So we end up with 2x. These canceled out, 4 minus 4. So 2x equals 8. 4x is 4. One thing I didn't mention on the other video is that if we talk about restrictions on x and solving, that we need to pay attention to what do we get in denominator. That actually happens on this one, because if I were to go back and put 4 right here, 4 minus 4 is 0. We can't have 0 on the bottom so because it's undefined. So if we had this restriction on our denominator, x cannot be equal to positive 4 or negative 4. So if we look at it on here, as far as our answers, then we would say that this actually, even though it looks like it works, if we were to plug it in, 4 squared is 16 minus 16 would give you 8 over 0. So this is actually no solution. Now I do need to see the work on it and see that we can get it, but we just need to notice for future reference that if I put that 4 here or here, it's going to cancel into 0, and that's a problem. Okay, the ones that we're going to look at on the back are, that I'm going to work out, are number 7, that's right here, because I want you to notice that if we factor this, I get x times x minus 1. That denominator is just over 1. So we want to use the factored form. So I have this one, 1, and x minus 1. Remember, our least common denominator has to include everything. So if I look at this one, it has to be at least this. Well, that includes this part of the denominator, so we're good. So this is my least common denominator. So let's write this out. We have 2 over x times x minus 1 times my least common denominator. Remember, that's over 1. This is on top. Minus 1 times x minus 1 equals 2 over x minus 1 times that same common denominator. So first step is to find the least common denominator. Second step is to multiply that least common denominator times every single fraction. And we're doing this because it's equal. Now if we're going to think about our restrictions here, remember x cannot be 1 because if it were 1, 1 minus 1 would be 0. So if I were to get 1 as an answer, then that wouldn't work. Okay, so I think everybody's had time to write it. So let's look at what cancels. All of this cancels out and leaves me with 2. Here, it doesn't cancel, it simply changes the sign. Negative x times x is negative x in front times x minus 1. And over here, the x minus 1 cancels, and we get 2 times x, which is 2x. So let's simplify a little bit. X times x is x squared. Negative times positive is positive. Negative times negative is positive, equals 2x. Subtract our x from both sides. We end up with 2 minus x squared equals x. We want to put it all on one side together, and because this is negative, I'm going to move this stuff over that way. So I get x squared plus x minus 2. Because remember, when we move it over, it changes the sign. This does factor easily. X plus 2, x minus 1. 2 times negative 1 is negative 2. 2 minus 1 gives us the 1 in the middle. Remember, we take the opposite of what's inside. So after I've factored, then I'm going to solve. So this is telling me that x is negative 2 and positive 1. But because we said up here that we can have that 1, then this is not a solution. So our only solution here is negative 2. That's the one that works. Okay, last one we want to go over here. First, this needs to be factored because I don't know what it includes. So if I factor this, I get x plus 5, x minus 2. And so if we look at this denominator, it includes the x minus 2. So this is my least common denominator, x plus 5, x minus 2. So let's multiply each one. So I have 2 over x minus 2 times x plus 5, x minus 2. And you may need some extra room on your papers when you're working this out. So most of you are doing really good about showing your work. But if you're not, get some other notebook paper, write it out, and then just submit that picture to me. And that way I can read what you did. And so in our last fraction, we're going to multiply by that denominator. So all of this cancels out, leaves me with 6. Here, x minus 2 cancels out, so I have x times x plus 5. And here, x minus 2 cancels out, and I have 2 times x plus 5. So let's simplify. I wrote that kind of fast. I'll give you a minute there to write that. So I multiply each fraction by my least common denominator, and okay, so I should have it written. So we have 2x plus 5 plus 10, x squared plus 5x plus 6. And so we have x squared. We're going to move this 2x over, so it gives me plus 3x. Move the 10 over, which is subtracting, so I get minus 4. This one also factors easily. And so we have x plus 4, x minus 1. So if we solve, it tells us we get -4 and +1 as my solutions. If we look back up at the top, the only thing that x cannot be is -5 or +2. So x cannot be -5 or +2. These are neither one that issue, so those are my solutions. So you need to make sure that I do see your work, especially what is the least common denominator, and show that you're multiplying it, because some of you are just writing answers on there. That doesn't make any sense if you're just coming up with some answers, because obviously you can see on these that there's a lot of work to be done. So this lesson will be posted for, what's the day? Today's Friday. So this will be on Monday, and it'll be due on the next Friday. And we're going to have a quiz coming up at the end of that week also. If you have questions, please email me or send me a message in Google Classroom. Talk to you later.